the most probable scenario will go forward. We will start discussing in order to have an election and compose a new parliament.
Last week was full of surprises as Parliament ground to a halt. The STTC scandal took center stage as we predicted, and the end game of the Liberal government started to take shape. Now we have new threats from the Bloc, another citizen following in Christian Frith's shoes to the steps of Parliament, and rumors starting to swirl about prorogation.
Let's take a look.
Why is there so many English people here?
Why, Mr. Blanchet, why are you still willing to work with the Liberal government when they voted down this motion? Is that not sending a signal of some sort?
Okay, let's understand things as they are. The government, I will learn that word one day, did not have the spine to provide us and Canadians and Quebecers with a clear answer. First, the Parliament voted clearly in favor of the motion. Then the government said that the ministers could not vote in favor of the motion, but that this vote would be free for other members of Parliament affiliated with the Liberals. And then they said that's because it's a procedure thing that prevented them from making a clear decision. So they just want to get some more time and to keep not deciding about anything. They might hope that they will go further than October 29th. They will not. So they have until a few days from now to go on with the royal recommendation. And if they do not, we will start as rapidly as next week to speak with other oppositions in order to get ready to go into an election. And I will tell you both in English and French that it is noticeable that the NDP voted in favor of this motion and that they could have eventually to assume the consequences of such a vote if we get to the next step without the government providing us and Canadians and Quebecers with what we want.
That sounded like a threat to the NDP.
Well, I think what he's saying, it's noticeable that the NDP voted with the Bloc on this. And yeah, he's going to basically say it'll be very interesting to see the result of the next potential vote of non-confidence, given the fact that the NDP voted with the Bloc on this, knowing what the Bloc's threats were. So the Bloc they played this so well. You can say what you want about their politics, but they played this so well. Because they announced prior to this vote that happened last week that, listen, we are giving an ultimatum to the government. If they don't meet it, then we will be taking down the government. So they announced that, knowing full well that the government in all likelihood will not comply. So that allows them to essentially signal to their voters, see, we're trying to get you some more things. And by the way, this vote for the old age security increase isn't just for Quebec, it's for 4 million Canadians outside of Quebec as well. That's what he's talking about here.
So he's trying to show that, the Bloc has your best interests at heart. If they had just voted alongside with the Conservatives on their very first opposition motion, then they wouldn't have had that opportunity to show their voter base, look, we're trying to get you more stuff. Why are you not voting for us? We're trying. It's the government standing in the way.
Right. So knowing full well that the government most likely won't do this, this was a shrewd and very calculated maneuver by the Bloc in order to show their voters, do some showboating, say, look, we're trying to get some things done for you, knowing full well that they wouldn't, and that way they could put some more distance between themselves and the Trudeau government because of how close LaSalle Lamar Verdun was, right? And there's other ridings that they're competing against. There's really only two major parties that are competing against each other in Quebec. That's the Bloc and the Liberals. So they're trying to put as much distance between them and the Bloc as possible and maybe overtake some of the seats that the Liberals have, gaining some more seats. Because right now the Bloc is running to be the official opposition. That is their end game right now.
Right, and they have a possibility of getting it because the Liberals and the NDP are polling so poorly that we could have the Bloc as official opposition.
Well, and we're going to revisit that when we take a look at some polls after this. But so now what they're essentially saying is the NDP knew what their ultimatum was. The NDP knew how they framed this, and the NDP voted with the Bloc anyway, right? So what they're saying is, well, that would have signaled to the NDP that, well, if you vote with us, then you're essentially agreeing with our ultimatum, or we bring down the government. So now if the NDP votes with the Liberals in the next confidence vote, then it's going to be twice as bad for them. Not only did they rip up the agreement, but they also have completely flip-flopped on how they're voting in terms of voting with the Bloc and the Conservatives on this ultimatum, and then they'll turn around and support the government. So it will really put them in a very big bind once this next confidence vote comes. So Yves Blanchette, hats off to you. Very good politics.
This was diabolical, really.
Yeah. And they've been waiting. They've just been waiting in the wings because they haven't been able to do like anything, right? Because of the supply and confidence agreement. So they've just been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And then as soon as Jagmeet Singh, again, stupidly announced it when he did, that's when Yves and his strategy team got to work. Remember we said the Bloc has a lot of very capable MPs, and it's a pity that they're not Conservative. Mm-hmm. This is the result. You see this really solid strategic move by the Bloc and what they've done here. So now we look at what he said. So he was talking about as early as next week. That's not a week from now, folks. That's
Monday.
2
days from now. Or, well, we're recording this Saturday night, so 2 days from now.
So I haven't heard anything from the Liberals in terms of, saying, yeah, let's go. And Trudeau's off to France. So who knows? But what we do know is that it sounds like the Bloc is going to really start coordinating with the Conservatives. And they're going to start talking to the NDP and saying, hey, how much further down do you guys want to go? Because right now, they are doing fairly decent in the polls compared to the Liberals, not compared to everybody else, but compared to the Liberals. So they have a possibility of gaining a decent amount of seats. Not the Prime Minister job, Jagmeet, sorry to say. I know it's a shock to you. But, Jagmeet isn't stupid either. He knows he's not going to be Prime Minister. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. But we're not done yet.
I just want to clarify in English, the October 29th deadline is still in effect. You're still giving the Liberals time to, give the royal recommendation despite the vote today.
At the very beginning of this is if the Liberals do not give us what we demand on behalf of 4 million Canadians and 1 million Quebecers and supply management, we will start discussing with opposition in order to have this government fall. If in the meantime it becomes clear that it is impossible to achieve that, we will start those discussions. But what we saw today is not by itself a proof that it's impossible. They could decide, notwithstanding the motion, to give the royal recommendation to C31 mine. It's still possible. So let's be fair with our commitment, even if it's quite clear that it's not good news and that electoral alert is a bit higher and people should start taking pictures.
That was cheeky.
So again, another little threat there, and it was very subtle, very subtle. So, you know, the reporter's basically trying to say, okay, yeah, you're saying all of this, Blanchette, but you're still giving the Liberals until the 29th. And what Blanchette was like, listen, what I said is that if they don't give the royal recommendation within a couple of days, and this was a couple of days ago, by the way, and if they don't give us the vote, and they don't give us the supply management, so what that means is this is a supply bill is what it is, and what that means is
they need
it's
tax money. Yeah.
So in order to actually say, sure, we're going to pass this and increase the amount of funding given to, or rather match the funding that people over 74 get to the people over 64 get, you would need to increase the amount of money being spent each year by around $3.5 million, something like that.
Was it million or billion?
Sorry, billion. So they would need to pass the bill, but also ensure that that's updated in most likely the fall economic statement, something like that. So they would have to do both. Now, the issue is that, sure, you can give it royal recommendation, but the second part of that condition is this still needs to be passed by October 29th. And the longer that they wait to actually give it royal recommendation, the longer it sits in limbo, unscheduled, with no intention of doing anything with it in the Senate. Because it has to have royal recommendation for it to actually be scheduled into the Senate schedule to actually be dealt with.
Right, because it'll just drop dead if it doesn't get that royal recommendation.
Right now, that bill has gone as far in the Senate as it can go. Now it's dead in the water without royal recommendation. And the Senate is dealing with a bunch of other things. So in order to push that forward, they have to have royal recommendation. So at some point, it becomes impossible, as Yves Blanchette said, to actually push this forward in terms of time by the 29th. So that's why he's basically saying, well, you know, if you guys don't say yes by next week, and that's where we heard from another representative of the Bloc, and now Yves Blanchette, they're basically like, next week, we are going to be starting to talk with these other parties. So, and then his little remark at the end is basically like, so yeah, everyone needs to kind of understand that an election is becoming more and more probable by the day. If you want to be ready, you better start taking your pictures, get your headshots, and getting your lawn signs printed. That's basically what he was saying at the end.
Several cabinet ministers have come out and said this is bad policy. It's cabinet that has to give the royal recommendation. Are you being honest with yourself about the chances of the bill actually passing?
Yes, I am. And I think I'm even honest with you. I'm not certain at all that this bill will pass. Not certain at all.
And there you go.
I mean, at least he has realistic expectations.
Right? Because again, the reporters are trying to say, well, you know, are you actually thinking this is going to pass? He's like, no,
I'm not.
He's like, what? But this just lays out, you know, the whole motivation behind this, right? He's like, no, I'm not certain this is going to pass. In fact, I think it's probably not going to pass. So everybody get ready. That's what he's saying. So you know, we don't hear a lot from Blanchette, but he's a very clever guy.
He is, you know. It's a shame that he's blocked, because I really do think he's a good politician, and I'll probably get crucified in the comments for this, but you know, if you look at his skill as a politician, I think it's good. As someone who's voting for a politician, you want that person to have your best interests at heart. The thing about this particular politician is his interests and his constituents' interests are only Quebec. I think we could use people like that across Canada, and it would be to the benefit of all Canadians. I think, though, that he does stick to his guns, and he's not like Jagmeet, who's waffling back and forth. Oh yeah, you know, we're gonna get rid of our agreement with the Liberals, but we're still gonna support them.
But this is where we try and be objective, right? You know, we're going to give credit where credit is due. We hate the Bloc's platform because it's primarily geared only to serve the citizens of Quebec, and the rest of Canada be damned.
And it's a separatist party. Again, we believe that Canada is stronger together. But I think you can say, does this person work hard for the interests of his constituents? And the answer is yes.
And he's also a very, very shrewd politician. So I haven't seen many mistakes from Yves Blanchette in terms of strategy. So again, hats off.
But I said we will give this government one chance to do something right for many Quebecers and many Canadians. If they do not seize the opportunity, then the most probable scenario will go forward. We will start discussing in order to have an election and compose a new parliament. Many things may happen. Nobody says that the NDP will not start supporting the government again. We don't know that. The Prime Minister might decide to prorogue the parliament. He might even have a blip of leadership and decide to go into election himself. So the chances that our bills are really adopted and implemented are not so good, but I keep fighting in order to have this done because that's the right thing to do. You know, the numbers being what they are, we might want to go into election also. But we do want to get something to those people between 65 and 74 years old and to producer under supply management.
So sounds like Yves agrees with us. There's only a finite number of scenarios here where this goes forward.
Yeah.
But again, even if the NDP continues to prop up the government won't get anything done.
Well, and that's it. Right now, as I've said in the other video, there's 4 scenarios that I can see. One is that the government hands over those papers to the RCMP, and then they go about business as usual, and then we have an election sometime next year. Number 2 is that the Liberals call an election themselves. So Justin Trudeau would go to the Governor General and request that Parliament be dissolved, and then we go to election. Number 3 is prorogation, which again, all the bills in the House would be dissolved, like they would just be dead in the water. And then the last one is that
that's a vote of non-confidence.
Yeah, thank you, a vote of non-confidence. I suppose also you could say that the government doesn't hand over the papers and we continue with non-government business until who knows when, and then it's probably going to bring about a vote of non-confidence. But those are really the only scenarios that I see are possible, and a number of them end with all these bills currently in the House falling dead in the water. And it's not just the bills in the House, it's the bills in the Senate as well. And that includes Bill C-293. I know a lot of you have been asking us about that one. And if the government falls or if the government prorogues Parliament, that one's dead in the water too.
Everything in the Senate dies. But there's nothing else new that's going to be going into the House of Commons because make no mistake, folks, this government is dead.
Yeah.
It is literally dead. It's not on its last legs. It's dead.
Yeah.
There's nothing else coming out of it.
They're trying to resuscitate it and it's just not working.
Well, and here's the thing. So the possibility about the turning over the documents. The Liberals are now going to have a very hard time turning over those documents now. Why? Because they have come out with this ridiculous narrative that this would violate Canadians' Charter of Rights.
Right. So then them willingly doing it, willingly handing over these documents would be like they are complicit in violating Canadians' Charter rights.
Yeah, in their accusation.
Right. Which, again, as you've seen in our video with Karina Gold, it's not violating the charter rights of Canadians. It's not violating anybody's charter rights. It's just an excuse that they're trying to use to scare Canadians.
Right. But the other interesting thing that Yves said is he brought up prorogation too. Everyone we talked to is bringing up prorogation.
Yep. We were actually at an event today with Michelle Ferreri, Michael Barrett, and Larry Brock, and prorogation was discussed as well as a possibility. Again, nobody except Justin Trudeau knows what's going to happen, but prorogation is a very real possibility right now.
Well, and strategically, let's just talk about that. What is Justin Trudeau's best course of action versus the Liberal Party's best course of action. Neither include turning over the documents, neither include calling an election, and neither include allowing this to go to a vote of non-confidence.
Right.
Both of those choices involve proroguing Parliament. Why? Because proroguing Parliament gets them out of all of these investigations, number one. And number two, it would allow them to get some breathing room and some time. So, what's the option that's best for Justin Trudeau? Well, the option that's best for Justin Trudeau is he prorogues Parliament, kind of resets himself, comes back in the spring, and kind of comes out swinging. But even then, he's done. The Liberal Party's done. That's not going to, impact the polls whatsoever. That's his ego. The second part is what is best for the Liberal Party. If Justin Trudeau capitulates to everybody around him and actually capitulates to logic and reason, he will prorogue Parliament, resign, and then the Liberal Party will hold a leadership campaign, choose a new leader, they become Prime Minister, and then everything comes back with a speech from the throne. And in all likelihood, we will then go to an election because the NDP are going to be pretty ticked off that their pharmacare bill was just crushed. So they would most likely vote against the Liberals there, and obviously the Conservatives and the Bloc would. So that's the best of the worst case scenario for the Liberals. But it's interesting though. We have seen and heard prorogation brought up more and more and more and more.
Because I think, unfortunately, it's the logical choice for somebody who wants to stay in power, and that's Justin Trudeau.
But we are dealing with somebody who seems to be a narcissist and somebody who has a massive ego. And he's been talking about not being bullied and all of this stuff. So is he going to, stand there and have a vote of non-confidence brought against him? That would be the dream scenario, actually, for all the opposition parties. They would say, thank you very much. And the NDP better hope a vote of non-confidence comes around that they can vote for it. Why is that? Well, let's take a look at some of the polls. So this is the latest poll that has been published, and this is Main Street Research. So what this poll is showing you is that 44% of respondents who have decided, or they are basically saying, yeah, I'm thinking of voting for a party. This is what these statistics are for. So 44% of those voters have said, we're going to be voting Conservative. 20% of those voters have said we're going to vote NDP, and only 19% have said we are going to vote for the Liberals.
That's shocking that the Liberals are the third party. I really wonder how it plays out with the seats, because the Bloc only runs in Quebec, and it's possible that they get more seats than the Liberals.
This is the latest Nanos poll. So the figures are on the right. So again, Conservatives leading with 41.6%, Liberals at 21.6%, and NDP on their heels with 21.5%.
Wow.
And the NDP were really down. I think as below as like 17% in Nanos's last poll. You may be wondering, where did they get their numbers from? Well, you can see they got them from the Liberal Party. So that's how the Nanos figures play out. And remember, Nanos is a bit more Liberal friendly.
But look how the mighty have fallen. Like, the Liberals were up above 40%, and now they're at half that practically.
And last but not least, because we want to round it out and be a little balanced, this is Abacus. So they have the Conservatives at 43%, no change from their previous poll. Liberals have lost 1%, so they're down to 21%, and the NDP are up by 1 again, stealing that away from the Liberals at 19%. So the NDP have started to nip at the heels of the Liberals. And again, if I'm the NDP, I'm seeing these trends. You need to capitalize when you're starting to peak.
Yeah.
And from what we've seen,
this is going to be it.
This is going to be the peak, right? And as they campaign, they have an opportunity, very, very small one, but they have an opportunity to maybe grab some more seats in the GTA from the Liberals. That's basically where they're going to be grabbing them from. They're not going to be grabbing any seats from the Conservatives. You can bet that they're having enough problems holding on to the seats that they have.
Well, and I think the longer the NDP hold on, the worse it's going to get for them, because they're starting to kind of creep back up a little bit. If they vote non-confidence again with the Bloc, or sorry, pardon me, if they vote confidence in the government, as in they vote alongside the Liberals again, with the Bloc and the Conservatives voting non-confidence, so voting against the government, I think they will see their fortunes turn very, very quickly, and the NDP will start to fall again.
I think so, especially because the next motion, I'm expecting it to be loaded with all of these scandals. Like, given the SDTC scandal, given the accelerator scandal, given the ArriveCAN scandal, given all of these other scandals, given the fact that the government has ground to a halt and cannot pass any legislation, and all the rest of the scandals, we have no confidence in this government. That's pretty much going to be the crux of the motion I'm predicting. How do you vote? How do you vote confidence in a government that literally cannot even discuss what it wants and is embroiled in all these scandals? Like, rationally, you cannot.
Well, and as the NDP, how can you vote confidence in a government that's squandering like $400 million worth of taxpayer money and giving it to billion-dollar corporations? They're the ones who are saying that Justin Trudeau is supporting corporate greed. And then to turn around and like support Justin Trudeau, you can't do that.
Well, and Peter Julian announced the other day that he was happy that, I believe, the pharmacare bill just finished committee stage in the Senate, so it's on its way to third reading. They're going to be hoping that third reading happens ASAP.
But then it needs royal assent. Even if something has passed through third reading in both the House and the Senate, but does not receive royal assent, and Parliament is either dissolved or prorogued, then it's dead. Like, it's done. You have to have royal assent.
And that takes a while. So that's where we're at right now. But there's one more piece of information. Should the current debate somehow end of the documents being turned over to the RCMP and the SDTC scandal, the Conservatives have another privilege motion waiting in the wings that will take priority in the House. What is that about? That is from our friend Randy.
Randy? Have you been hanging out with Randy?
Randy Boissonneau. So, Stephen Anderson has found to be lying to committee, has found to be withholding information from committee when asked for, wouldn't disclose who the other Randy is, that he allegedly says there is another Randy. So he has essentially been found in contempt, and they are now going to be summoning him to the bar of the House. And I don't know if we've had two different people summoned to the bar of the House within such close proximity in this history.
In the same year? I don't think so. I mean, before that, it was during COVID, but nobody had been summoned to the bar of the House and questioned and interrogated by the MPs like that. It was Christian Firth, and then before that, it was sometime in, I think, 1913. So it, like, never happens. And for it to happen twice, something's going on.
Well, and it just, I think, is indicative of this corruption that is in the Liberal government. It's just infested with it. So in a way, the Conservatives are hoping that they can actually get Stephen Anderson before all of this stuff goes down. But don't get me wrong, they would be very happy to go to an election right now.
And then pull him in afterwards.
But they would be so happy to have Mr. Anderson forced to come to the bar of the House. And maybe the Sergeant-at-Arms would have to go and get him. I don't know. But then he would have to answer questions to the House. And I doubt that he's going to become, claiming mental anguish and all this other stuff that Christian Firth was.
Well, you never know.
Yeah. But anyhow, so there is a lot up in the air right now, folks. And it's gonna be interesting to see when Justin Trudeau comes back from France Is he going to prorogue Parliament, or is he going to let it ride and see what happens? So my bet, I think we may have a prorogation coming, and that means that we may not get an election before Christmas, but that virtually guarantees that there's going to be a confidence vote immediately following prorogation, and the government will fall.